Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown!
Yes.
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole. Throws it up. Got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest. It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, welcome aboard, people. It's great to have you back for this first show of 2024 on this Tuesday, January 2nd. And there is plenty to get to, as of course last night, the national semifinal football games between Michigan, Alabama, Texas, and Washington were both extraordinary games. We have got basketball with the Pacers have won 4 straight. Great news for Indiana football as Philip Dunham is coming back out of the portal. The Colts defeat Las Vegas. And Indiana basketball is traveling for their first Big Ten game. Well, back in the Big Ten game. So lots to get to, lots of good things to talk about. Glad to have you along. Don't forget Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda here each and every day. And glad to have John, the producer, with us, sitting in until Don Fischer joins us today. Another great lineup. He'll be with us today as opposed to Monday, since we were off yesterday. Happy New Year, everybody. Mike DeCourcy back with us, chronic Hoosier as well. And we'll see if John can scare up some kind of sound from yesterday. Maybe hear from Michael Penix, Kalen DeBoer.
I like your choice of shirt today, by the way. The Penix Envy, for those of you not watching on YouTube.
Yeah, if you can't see it, it's my my new favorite shirt. Penix Envy, baby, in purple and white. So
and one real quick note, though. Philip Dunham, that whole idea of him withdrawing from the portal, that didn't actually happen. All he did was delete the post. There's not been any sort of announcement whether or not Philip Dunham is actually withdrawing or not, by the way.
I did hear that. I did hear that he deleted the post. So some question marks there, possibly.
We'll have to see. Yeah.
I got to see Florida Atlantic got upset over the weekend by Florida Gulf Coast State, a team that Indiana played earlier this season. And I just happened to be down there. And so I got to see that game. Talk about a high octane game, man. They were getting it.
So you brought the bad juju to Dusty May by watching Florida Atlantic in person, unfortunately.
I did. Hey, you got to buck up, baby. You got to buck up and get at it. But what a great the college semifinal games were extraordinarily, stupendously good. Michigan, Alabama goes to overtime in a game that I thought Alabama had, and then they kind of give away at the end. I'd like to have seen Michigan get beat then, but I'd rather see Michael Penix beat Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, because now I sent this tweet out, and it could be, unless I missed it somewhere, Michael Penix could become the first quarterback to beat Jim Harbaugh in Michigan at 2 different schools.
That's true, because the only other time that he faced Michigan was with Indiana. Back
And
when they beat him in Memorial Stadium during the COVID season.
2020, they beat him 38-21, I believe. So he threw for 342 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. And I think he's gotten a little bit better since then.
Oh yeah.
So that could be interesting. I was torn. I had a $50 to win ticket on Texas that had been placed in September.
Isn't that wild?
For Texas to win it all. But I'd rather see.
It's a good
Michael
consolation.
Penix
And maybe you don't even
Yes.
want to call it a consolation. Like surely you were rooting for Washington from the beginning. Like
I was.
most people around here.
No, without question. What a game for Michael Penix last night. Holy smokes.
And I gotta say, let's talk about real quick the ending to all that went down in that Washington Texas game, because it seemed like all Washington had to do was take a couple of knees and then punt the ball away. But instead, they decide to run the ball, try to get a first down. And I understand, that's another way to put it away. But Dylan Johnson, the running back, gets injured. And instead of crawling off the field, they have an injury timeout, leaving Texas with a sizable amount of time on the clock. And it comes down to the final play of the game. Texas gets the ball back with 4th and goal and a second left. And I don't want to say Kalen DeBoer, pulled a Tom Allen or anything, but I mean, that wasn't, his highest of coaching, best of coaching decisions, I should say.
Running the ball is what you want to do.
But why wouldn't you take a knee is the other part of it.
Yeah. Well, the worst thing is I think they're going to end up losing Dylan Johnson for this championship game.
And that could be very costly. And I know you have the best quarterback in the country playing behind center, but you still need to have that complimentary running game to go along with it, especially how good of a game Dylan Johnson had last night against Texas.
Yeah, he's had a good season. This entire offense has been good, been fun to watch. It's going to be amazing to watch it against this vaunted Michigan defense. So looking forward to that. John, I'll let you scurry around there. I know you've got some things to get to. Can we recapture the desire, or do we even need bowl games outside of the college football 12-team playoff that is coming? I think that there are some that are worthy of it, but we've got to get rid of the bad boy mowers, Cheez-It, Pop-Tarts, Duke Mayo Bowl. Keep the major bowls, but I don't know that that's even going to be doable if the players are not going to play. But now, if you are paying them, because something else I was reading about was a particular coach. He just for reaching the playoffs, he got this big bonus, and for accomplishing that, he got this big bonus. And the players, though, they're not getting bonuses. So that's probably something that's going to change in the near future. I'm going to imagine, not that I want to see that, but I would rather see that and interesting football than everybody opting out and not playing and standing on the sidelines and watching their teammates play.
I know we mentioned some of this last week, but I think the biggest way, at least the most likely way to incentivize players in the future, especially those who won't be in the 12-team playoff, there has to be something built in. There has to be something built into their NIL deals. And I know they're not contracts, but there has to be something built in to where they are required. They sign ahead of time that, hey, if you're going to take all of this money from whatever company is going to provide this NIL money, you have to play until the end of the postseason, no matter what type of game you are playing in the postseason.
I agree, but also there's no way you're not going to be paying these players going forward if you want them to play in this game. And it sucked. I mean, I did not want to watch Georgia beat Florida State 63-3. That was pointless.
And that almost like the bowl game that you get into that is considered the highest outside of the playoff, which is the one that Georgia and Florida State were playing. You expect that to be a competitive matchup, considering you have supposedly the two best teams that aren't in the playoff, and yet it's one of the worst games we've had all postseason because of players that don't care and they have no reason to care.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder going to the 12-team playoff next year, and we'll talk to Mike about this. I know he'll have opinions on it. 7 games within that 12-team playoff format, and those are not necessarily bowl games anymore, but they're in cities that are
they're larger cities, but also, if you remember correctly, there's the opening rounds. So the teams that don't get the buys for the new playoff, they're played on campus sites. So if I think it's the 9
that would have been the only way.
And the 10 versus 11, or excuse me, 9 versus 12 and 10 versus 11.
I would have preferred to have seen those games remain bowl games and be held at neutral sites.
See, I disagree
because it's a playoff. It's a playoff, man.
Yeah, but I mean, and I know this, like, think about the NFL. The wild card games are played at home.
Yeah, I get that. Well, all games are played at home or away stadiums.
Yeah, up until the Super Bowl.
But in college, it is manageable enough to where you only have a few games. Well, you already have bowl games scheduled. Why not make it that? I mean, what's going to happen? I know that they're going to play games in the Rose Bowl, but what happens to the Rose Bowl?
Well, now those games, I believe, are still. So I believe once you get past the preliminary rounds, those will then become the neutral site games at the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, those kinds of things. But the opening rounds will be at campus sites.
We got some basketball tonight. Philip pointing out Iowa at Wisconsin, Northwestern at Illinois. John W. checking in. Justin, Philip. Forrest on the load. Las Vegas.
By the way,
Larry.
one last thing. When we mentioned the NFL, and I know we'll get to a break here shortly for Don Fischer, but the Colts with a chance to play their way into the playoffs this coming weekend.
Playoffs?
They'll play the Texans. Essentially, the winner will get a spot in the AFC playoffs.
Win and they're in. Win and they're in. I think that was what Bob Kravitz's article was that he wrote. We'll get to that and much more. Up next, though, Don Fischer. We haven't talked to him in a few weeks. Looking forward to him. Don Fischer on the program today. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Chronic Hoosier as well, and plenty more as this sports-heavy day here, the first show of 2024. Glad to have you. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. All right. I had a lot of comments on me shaving my face. How do you not notice that I shaved my face? Oh, man. Oh, well, the camera's off now. Back to being John the producer and not John the co-host. Do what? Morning, Don. Happy New Year to you.
Hey, John. How are you?
We are doing well. We're doing well today.
Yeah. Where's Jimbo at?
I believe he's getting a refill on his coffee.
Oh, he's a caffeine freak, huh? I don't drink coffee. That's why I say that.
Wow. Do you drink tea or anything, or do you? I guess.
Yeah, I always have. I have a green tea that I make every morning.
There you go.
I'm a health nut. I'm really not. I'm really not, but I like to say that because I drink green tea.
Got about 1 minute, Jimbo. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull this back in.
And it is your one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back here on this first show of 2024, and no better way to start it than with the golden voice himself, Don Fischer. How are you, sir? Happy New Year, Don.
Happy New Year to you, Jim. I'm doing fine. Can't complain. We had a nice holiday. It was really good.
Yeah, it's been not bad. Some great sports to watch. I doubt you were up late enough to watch Washington through it all the way through the end last night, because it was hell for me to get through it, I'll tell you, then to get up today. But, man, what a pair of national semifinal games we had between Michigan and Alabama, down to the wire and overtime, and then Washington, Texas ends up being just as close, 37-31 win for Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer. And, man, I put out two tweets last night, Don. One is, can Michael Penix Jr. become the first quarterback to beat Jim Harbaugh's Wolverines from two different schools? And what was the second one? Indiana is going to have former quarterback teammates not facing off per se, but in the national championship, with Michael Penix, of course, leading Washington, and Jack Tuttle is the backup to Michigan.
Yeah,
just a lot of irony there.
Yes, there is, and I wish Michael well. Michael, his last year at Indiana I think he was mentally drained. Because of the injuries that he had suffered throughout his career. He went into his last season at Indiana fearing that he was going to get hurt again. And because of that, he was not the quarterback that we had seen when he was healthy. But he was never healthy at Indiana through a whole season. Every year that he was at IU, he had an injury of some kind, two ACLs, two shoulder injuries. He just could not stay healthy in those 4 seasons. And when he got with Kalen DeBoer, it turned into magic again, because he was magical when he played in that season of 2020, the COVID season. His ability to throw the football, like you saw in that game last night, was just spectacular. He's one of the best long throwing, accurate quarterbacks I've ever seen. He just drops dimes on everybody. I guess that's the term that a lot of people are using, and without question, he's got tremendous accuracy, great vision, great touch. He's got all the tools to be really special. The problem is he doesn't stay healthy very long, and yet at Washington, I think he played both seasons without getting hurt.
Yeah, it has been good for him out west, and Yeah, some of those throws last night, I was like, oh, come on, man. Are you kidding me? They were just you couldn't have put them in better places at points. And he's got great receivers. What a great team. I mean, they make those calls and they have complete confidence in those guys, and it's because they make those plays.
Right. There's no question. He's spectacular, but he's got great receivers as well. And some of his receivers, that one receiver, I can't think of his name now, but that kid was spectacular. He made some of the toughest catches you could possibly imagine.
Roma Dunze?
Yeah, and he was really, really good. And they've got other guys too. They've got a really well put together football team, and it'll be fun to watch them in the national championship game against the Michigan Wolverines.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of Indiana football, I don't know if it's miscommunication or what, but there was word yesterday that Philip Dunham had taken his name out of the portal and was returning to Indiana, but now I'm hearing conflicting reports that is not necessarily true. So we're not really sure where they are on that situation.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of that. I pay no attention. I'm not on social media. I hear everything secondhand these days. I break no stories. I break none.
Well, yeah, this wouldn't really break anything because he had put it out. It was deleted, I believe.
Well, the one thing about Coach Signetti is that if you've decided to go, he says goodbye. And I'm not so sure that if Mr. Dunham wasn't getting quite what he saw elsewhere, that he decided to maybe try to come back, and maybe he just said, I'm coming back or whatever. I don't know. I shouldn't even speculate on it because literally I have no idea what happened there. All I can tell you is that if you've decided to go, he'll pretty much let you go without any fanfare.
Oh, no question about that. And looking forward to next year because these Huskies that we're talking about, Don, they're going to be in Bloomington. At least Kalen DeBoer and a good portion of them will be here as they are on Indiana's home football schedule next year.
Right.
You're going to have two teams in Michigan's at home as well, right? I
believe that's right.
You're going to have two teams. You're going to have the two teams that played in the national championship at home on the schedule in Bloomington next year. How often does that happen?
Well, they won't be the same teams.
You got that right.
They won't totally be the same teams. I guess J.J. McCarthy will probably still be there, and who knows. But at any rate, it'll be interesting to have two national championship contenders on Indiana's field next year.
Getting over to basketball, Indiana now turns their sights back towards the Big Ten. I keep wanting to say get into Big Ten play, and I know we have had those two games. I'm like, all right, they count on the record, but they don't count. We're into Big Ten play now because it just drives me nuts, the in and out. But getting back to Big Ten play, Indiana going on the road to where used to be what you would call, put that in the win column, but as our good friend Lee Corsell would say, not so fast, my friend. That is no longer just the automatic W there out in Lincoln.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And even though Ohio State was not very good at all last year, both these teams that Indiana is going to play this week are 11-2 on the season. And they're both much improved over 1 year ago. The game on the road against Nebraska on Wednesday night may be the first time that we have seen Xavier Johnson back in over a month or right at a month. Xavier hasn't played since the Harvard ball game. He missed 7 straight ball games. Hopefully he's not as rusty as you might think he would be coming off of that kind of a layoff because of the injury to his foot. And hopefully he's 100% and can play. I believe that will be the case if, in fact, he hasn't done something in practices leading up to the Nebraska ball game. So right now we're expecting that we'll see Xavier Johnson back out there and Khalil Ware as well, because Khalil, of course, was ill for the game against Kennesaw State. Might have been a big difference maker in that Kennesaw State game because of that size that he has at 7 foot. But nevertheless, the good news is that Indiana will likely have a full roster of players available to them on Wednesday night.
And they'll need it because you get into Big Ten play, especially on the road. Like I said, Nebraska, this is not your grandpa's Nebraska team. While they're not going to challenge Purdue to win the Big Ten title, they're also not some place that you can just waltz in and walk out with a guaranteed win anymore. You're going to have to play hard, play to win, and play smart. You can't foul out. You can't do things. You can't turn the ball over 18 times. Indiana is going to have to do all the things they need to do to win, and that probably includes hitting the three ball a little bit. They've been training that, so I that's not something I expect to continue at that level. But man, if they can just maintain a modicum of what they've been doing there, the production they've been getting, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, there's no question. They've shot they shot 50% in one game and like 47+% in the second ball game, or in the last two ball games that they played now. And they're taking more threes, which I think is critical for this ball club. Because if you show teams that you can make the three as well as shoot the three, they've got to come out and guard you. It opens up the inside game. And take a look what Malik Renew did in the ball game the other night, scoring 34 points and of course had a double-double with the 11 rebounds as well. But Malik has just taken on a whole new aura of his game here in the last couple of weeks with being able to shoot the three-point shot, because he was 1 for 3 in this ball game from the three-point line. So the ability to shoot the three is really, really good. Now, the ability to stop guys from shooting the three is something you can argue about, because Kennesaw State hit they hit 50% of their threes in that ball game.
Like 9 of 21, I think they shot
threes.
there.
17 threes they made.
Wow. I mean, I know that some teams get hot, but this is not a one-off. And while I don't know, other than a few teams in the Big Ten that are probably going to be able to do that, that's just I don't know what it is with this defense that allows the openings. I talk about this with Todd all the time, because he's I defer him. I'm not the guy, but I just think that they're getting caught up in switching too much sometimes, and they over rotate and leaving guys wide open, which they're feeding right into what these guys want them to do.
Yeah, but then you think about what the players were talking about, what the coaches adjusted to in that ball game against Kennesaw State, and it was because of the switching and the zone defense that they put up that they changed that scenario and finally got some stops because of it. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm not an X and O guy either by any stretch of the imagination, and have never been. All I know is this. I don't think Indiana has played as well defensively this year on a consistent basis as we've seen over the last 2 seasons. And I think that's where Indiana really has to make improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And not having Kalel Ware, of course, a huge difference in that last game. No
Sure.
question about that. But getting him back, he's somebody that's going to be tough for Nebraska to handle, because I don't know that they played anyone quite like him yet this year. If they haven't played Purdue. So it's going to, but Mackenzie Mbako, his shooting has really come along, but then he kind of disappeared. Not necessarily he disappeared, but his production was mitigated throughout the game after a great start out in that last ball game.
It was mitigated because he wasn't on the floor. I mean, he only played 14 minutes in that ball game, or right at it. In fact, I got to look at it real quick here. Mackenzie played 13 minutes and 55 seconds in that game. Why? Well, probably because defensively he wasn't getting the job done. And that was probably what had Mike Woodson upset about and why he wasn't putting him out there on a consistent basis. I mean, he started the second half, but he wasn't in there very long before he was pulled out. When you think about Mbako, he scores 14 points in like the first 8 minutes of the ball game. I mean, he was on fire. And then
best start he's had this season.
Right. And then the next thing you know, he's on the bench. So there are things that he's not doing that is keeping him from being on the floor a lot more, with a lot more minutes of playing time. And obviously that's a negative, but at the same time, you know that he is starting to become a major factor from a scoring perspective. I think he's got 5 games in a row now he scored in double figures. So he is definitely an offensive factor for this basketball team that they need, and they need him to be more consistent at the defensive end to give him more minutes and more opportunities.
You absolutely need him to always be a part of it because he makes it look so effortless. That start that he got off to, it helped propel Indiana to a great start. They hit their first 5 3-pointers in that game.
Right. So it's look right now. This is a basketball team that still I don't think is where it needs to be. At the same time, they have found them. This is the one thing that intrigues me about them. They find ways to win ball games, especially these tight ball games. And yeah, they've done it against mid-majors, that kind of thing. They found ways to win against those type of ball clubs. But they also found a way to win a ball game on the road against Michigan, and played very well in that contest, especially down at the wire. So this team has proven to me that they can be a resilient ball club and they can get it done when it looks like it's bleak out there. But it's also a ball club that's proved that they're not as consistent defensively as we need them to be. And as far as Khalil Ware is concerned, I think Khalil Ware in his previous 2 games before the Kennesaw State game, in which he did not play and where he was ill, those 2 games before kind of concerned me because he was not getting it done, not only from a scoring perspective, but from a rebounding perspective. So I'm a little, I mean, right now I'm not shaky, but I'm not feeling great about what I've seen from this ball club in the sense of competing at the highest level against some of the best teams in the country. And we're talking about the Big Ten now. And when I say that, I'm talking about the Big Ten as a whole. You've got to give this league credit for being one of the best leagues, one of the best Power 5 conferences in the country from top to bottom. And a lot of the teams in this league this year, Jim, I think are playing the same way. They're not as consistent as you would think that they might be because they're still working with new faces, new pieces to the puzzle, so to speak, for their respective programs. And I think there are a lot of teams right now. The team that finally finds itself on a consistent basis, with the exception of Purdue, with the exception of the Boilermakers, I think that's the one team you can count on being really good all season long. Everybody else has had the same issue where they'll play a great couple, 2 or 3 ball games, and then they'll come back out and lay an egg. And right now, I think that's the biggest question mark about this Indiana basketball team.
Yep, and getting Xavier Johnson back will be huge for them. How much he's able to play in this first game back, I don't know. And I don't know that he's coming back for sure. I'm just assuming and guessing that I thought he might play in the game the other night some. I thought that he might see some minutes on the floor to try to knock a little rust off before you get to Nebraska, but they held him out. More rest makes sense. But he's, like you said, it's been a month. And now he has to integrate with this team that has evolved and gotten better.
Right. That's the other issue because X has been out for a month, literally a month. He has not played basketball, and he's just started to practice again. I think he practiced a little bit before the Kennesaw State game. Finally had some contact, but it was not a significant amount. So right now they're just trying to get him ready, and I'm sure that they were just being as cautious as they possibly could be to make sure that he did not get hurt or he wasn't. He needs to be 100% coming back, and that's what I think they're most concerned about, and that's why I don't think he played until or will play until this ball game against Nebraska tomorrow night.
Are you back at Chop Shop tonight?
No, we don't have a talk show. We will not have a talk show at the Chop Shop until January 22nd because we'll be traveling at Rutgers next week. So we'll not have a show again next Monday night. We will have a show on the 15th, but it will be taped. That show will be taped because of Martin Luther King holiday. So that show will be taped, and we may have a special guest on that show. So just stand by for that.
We'll keep you noted. Bye. Cannot wait. Don Fischer, looking forward to it. And make sure you catch Don on the call coming up as Indiana travels to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you having me, buddy.
You betcha. Hey, we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda. Mike DeCourcy joins us next right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home, throw frozen ropes, baby. He throws frozen ropes.
I know, I love that term. And that's a great way to describe the way that he throws. It's like also like darts.
That's what 5 Left says.
Oh, I wasn't even looking at the screen.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's this weird, kind of a weird sidearm.
Yeah, it's not a natural looking throw.
Well, but it's always been laser-like, and it still is. It's like, shoo! It's like hitting the trigger on a F-16 fighter. Shoo! Off goes that missile. Hello to everybody. I am definitely out of touch. Who has two chairs?
I think he thought you had a second chair.
I see no second chair. That's a law firm, though. I'm going to second chair. It's a term. Oh, damn it, Matt. Sorry, I did not see this in time. Would he be as successful at Washington without his time in Bloomington? Well, I can answer that question, or I can give you my opinion. Yeah, because
it has solely to do with Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, I mean, it's the development, man. And now his injuries, I don't know that they happen or not. Were the injuries simply because he played on a team that couldn't protect him? I think some of it was just freak injuries. His body just wasn't developed enough yet. The one where he was running out of his last ACL tear, he's just running out of bounds. Freak accident. His shoulder. Yeah, that's but I mean,
Mike should be with us shortly. I know we may come back from break without him being here potentially, but he knows when he's supposed to be on here. So I'll go ahead and pull us back in.
The pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, January number 2 of 2024. Welcome in our good friend Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Michael, Happy New Year. How are you, sir?
I am doing okay, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I hate to hear if you sound a little down.
I've had better days, but it's a long story. So
we will save it not for a different forum.
Yes,
but I hate to hear that because you were always Mr. Chipper, and we know that thinking about you, no matter what it is.
Appreciate that.
Lots of great football last night. I don't know if you were able to stay up through the end of the second game. I struggled. It was a long end. I'm like, holy cow. But, and I'm paying the price today, but what phenomenal games we got to watch. I mean, at the end of the day, did the committee get it right?
No.
No. It's Florida State.
Unless you consider it just a TV show, which it's a heck of a TV show when it's done well, but if it's a legitimate championship, then no, they didn't get it right. Florida State earned their way in. Alabama did not. And they went with Alabama because they're Alabama, and that's the reality of it. And there's no question that that's what the priority was getting a better TV show. And so
absolutely,
they got a great TV show. It was fantastic. I mean, I'm not going to argue about that. But you can't exclude Florida State and say you had the championship run the right way. And that's why next year is so important. It's such a great opportunity for college football to get itself back in, or I shouldn't say back, but get itself in order with all the rest of the sports in the world. I mean, they're the only ones that have done this for more than 100 years, and they've constantly defended it, and they spent a lot of time making fans think that that's the only way it could be, and that it wasn't worthwhile to do it another way. And I think that the fact that we had so many mismatches over that period in the college football playoff led a lot of people to believe, well, it'll always be this way. And we're seeing now, no, I mean, it's not always going to be this way. That Washington could come out and go undefeated and win a game against Texas, and Michigan can come out and go out and beat the SEC champion. So it's a much more balanced sport now, and I think that the biggest part of that has been the transfer portal, and the second, and I think ultimately it will show that more players can feel like they can have a part in this thing if they want to go to Penn State, or if they want to go to Oklahoma, or they want to go to Southern Cal. They don't have to feel like they'll have no shot at it, because they can win their way in by winning their leagues.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this weekend. So what happens to the rest of these bowl games? Because a lot of these this year were just I don't know the right words to use, but they were just not up to snuff. So what happens next year when you go to 12 teams, and those are the games that we're all going to be focusing on? What do you even do with the rest of these games? Is it over? Is it done?
Jim, what you have to remember is that you want to talk about television shows. Well, that's what the bowl games have been forever. That's what, especially for the last couple of decades, as they have proliferated. ESPN loves these, especially ESPN, but even other networks like Fox, when they've gotten involved, but especially ESPN has just bathed in these. And I'll read you some numbers, because I heard you talking about this earlier when I showed up for my usual time slot, not remembering that I was on later today. Georgia, Florida State, which was probably the worst bowl game of 2023/2024. 10 million viewers they got for that horrific game, in which
that's a lot of numbers. That's a lot of numbers.
How about Rutgers, Miami? Not 3 million people.
And that was a hell of a game. It
was a hell of a game, but it was Rutgers and Miami, two teams that were not of great consequence this year. Rutgers had a nice year, but they weren't a real factor in the Big Ten race. But they drew 3 million. NC State and Kansas. Like, who even thinks about NC State and Kansas when you think about football, other than people who remember Torrey Holt and Phillip Rivers? 4.3 million for NC State and Kansas. I mean, it's just it just shows you that these games aren't going anywhere, even if the players don't show up. Somebody's putting on the pads and playing football, and America watches, and that's not going to change. Now, there will be more playoff games, so that will impact the viewership for these to an extent. But I don't think they're going away at any point, as long as ESPN is interested in putting them on as programming. And they are very low-cost programming. The bowls don't pay out huge amounts to the participating institutions. So they are low-cost programming that draws a significant audience. I'm not sure the ESPN gets a better deal out of anything they pay for.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what it's like going forward. Do the players, they're going to have to start getting paid, I think, in these bowl games as well. We see a lot of coaches getting mega bonuses just for reaching a bowl game. And I would imagine that the players are going to want their piece too, quote unquote.
Well, I think that what one has to remember is, first of all, that in order to get paid as a football player, that you have to especially for the younger players, they have to establish themselves as someone worthy of being paid by one of those groups. I'm forgetting the term we use, collectives. That in order to get paid, either as a transfer or as someone to be retained, you have to perform well and catch the attention of either another school / coaching staff / collective or your own. So that's what will draw players to play in. But there's not enough money in any of this to say to someone who is a first-round pick like Marvin Harrison Jr., a top 5 pick like Marvin Harrison Jr., if you play, we'll give you this. What are they going to give him? I mean, he's putting at risk, and I think the risk is overstated, but it's not like it's never happened. He's putting at risk for minimal return. Possibly $25 million, $30 million, something like that. And then, of course, what is gained beyond that in the second contract, which is astronomical. So in order to win a game that coaches have acknowledged for decades, doesn't really mean enough for them to turn around, to stick around. I mean, I was in Cincinnati in 2009. I was working for the Sporting News at the time, and they asked me to go to Cincinnati's football banquet at the Hilton, I think it was, downtown Cincinnati, and hang out and talk to the players who were coming in because their coach was leaving them when they were undefeated. And having a chance to play in a bowl game as an undefeated team to complete an undefeated regular season. And Brian Kelly had to go, not only took the Notre Dame job, which is understandable, but recruiting the next class of Notre Dame players was more important than coaching the Bearcats to an undefeated season. So once that message was sent, and I'm not saying Brian was the first to do that, but that was a pretty emphatic example. Once that message was sent, why would anybody think the players would view those games as important enough to put at risk significant amounts of money in the future?
Now the good stuff, baby. Michael Penix and Jim Harbaugh. Do you know that, to my knowledge, Michael Penix can become the first quarterback to beat Jim Harbaugh's Wolverines at 2 different schools? After knocking him off in 2020 at Indiana, 37-21 or 38-21, I believe it was. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 342 yards in that game, and he is far improved now. He has much better weapons around him. I think that this could be a very exciting game from completely polar positions of these teams. I mean, Michigan is just going to try to run all over Washington, and they're not great on the run. But yet, let me tell you, watching Michael Penix throw some of the throws he makes, I'm like, gee whiz, that thing's like a laser-guided missile.
Well, he's an amazing passer. He really is. And his receivers are terrific. They made some terrific catches yesterday. I would say that it really, to me, it comes down to whether Washington can protect Michael at a reasonable rate. Like, he's going to get sacked. I mean, he's not getting out of there with no sacks. The Michigan D-line is too good, and the Washington O-line is just leaky enough because certainly we saw Texas players get pressure on Michael last night. Michigan's D-line is much better than Texas's. So he's going to get sacked. A couple things have to happen. One, when he gets hit, he can't get hurt. Two, when he gets hit, he can't turn it over. And three, when he doesn't get hit, then he's going to have to turn out those big plays, because he's going to need a few of those long ones to loosen up what Michigan's able to do defensively and maybe create some avenues for the running game. We don't know whether or not Washington's best running backs, we don't know his status. We saw him get hurt on the final scrimmage play for UW last night. There was a lot of criticism of Kalen DeBoer for not taking the knee after the game. I thought they should have, but football coaches don't think like that. If you can't turn out the clock, if you can't run it out all the way to zero with the 3 or 4 takings of the knee, I should say. If you can't run out the clock with that, they're not doing it. I see it in the NFL every week. They just don't think that way. The safe thing to do, because it doesn't risk turning the ball over and because it doesn't risk injury, as it turned out, and therefore a clock stoppage, and therefore giving the other team a chance to catch a punt and be interfered with and get 15 yards up the field, et cetera, et cetera. The safe thing to do is take the knees. If you want to take a couple extra seconds, you can wiggle around a little bit before you take it. But at the end of the day, especially because they tried the onside kick there, your field position was going to be good. So I thought that was the way to go. But as I said, I think some of the things I read on Twitter last night were harsher than that. Like I said, I thought they should have. But lots of people are calling it coaching malpractice and this and that. It's not. It's standard issue. It's what coaches do. If you can't get the ball back, if I take a knee, they're taking a knee. But if you can get it back, they're going to try for that first down. It's the way coaches are wired.
Yeah, and man, it unfortunately is probably going to possibly going to come back to bite them a little bit, because the way it didn't sound good listening to Kalen last night and talking about it and looking at it, but there's no point in guessing on that. They're a team that, although they are prolific passing, obviously, they've still needed and used that portion of their run game. That has been a very, very big part of their run game. They get some nice yardage from him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not necessarily easy to replace. We'll see what they have behind him, because we didn't see it a lot last night. They were pretty reliant on their regular group. So we'll see what they have. I imagine, we saw a lot of trick plays in that game. And I think, honestly, from Washington, too many. Most of them didn't work. Some of them were nearly disastrous. But I think there are ways that you can do clever things, not just out and out trick plays, but different formations, different usages that you can maybe scheme up in that week, or that you worked on during that month that you had off. There may be some things that they can bring out that can disguise a little bit whatever impact there is to the running game.
Yeah, and looking forward to what it's going to be like to see Washington take on this Michigan team. Of course, some familiarity. Not only do you have a former Indiana quarterback going up against a Jim Harbaugh, you've got 2 former Indiana quarterbacks, teammates, that are on opposite sides. You got the number 1 quarterback for Washington and the number 2 quarterback for Michigan. I mean, has that ever happened? I know it's probably been a short window because of all the things that have allowed those things to happen now, but I don't think that that's ever happened before in a national championship game. It's nuts.
It is an amazing coincidence. And especially, let's be honest, coming from Indiana, which has not been exactly a football factory, it's pretty amazing that that would be the case. But
and they've got A.J. Barner on Michigan, who is a big part of their offense.
Let me ask you this. When you were watching last night's game, how much of you said to yourself that the wrong player got the Heisman Trophy? because
Boy,
he was extraordinary under the.
I've been at Penix. I was on Penix all year long.
I know. I'm just sort of reminding you of why they got it wrong.
I also wonder though, and this is the difference, is Odunze. I know you're a big fan of Marvin Harrison Jr. What differentiates him from, say, Romeo Odunze?
Well, I think what differentiates is explosion after the catch to an extent. I think Odunze is an amazing receiver, but he doesn't have the physical tools that Marvin has, the size, the length.
He definitely does not have the pedigree, baby.
There are only so many that have that. But I think Odunze is a phenomenal player and a worthy All-American. He was terrific last night. The catch he made down the center of the field, I don't know how players do that. I really don't. I mean, he's being held, he's being chopped at, and the ball is coming from 50 yards away over his shoulder, and he finds it and catches it. That's one of the things in sports that I really don't comprehend how it gets done. It's all, when I watch it happen, I'm constantly amazed that players can do that. But he did, and he was phenomenal. And I was reminded as well. I wonder what you thought of this when Washington was interfered with on that long pass. I hear people all the time say that PI should be a spot foul in the NFL. And I saw that play and I'm like, absolutely, it should stay as it is. Because why not just whack at the guy when you're beaten? And that's exactly what Texas did. They just said, we're beaten. If I let this go, it's 50 yards. If I hit him, it's 15. We'll take the 15. It's the ultimate in taking the lesser of two evils, so to speak.
Absolutely. Oh, it's a smart play defensively.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you don't do it, that's malpractice. That's defensive malpractice if you don't do it. Should the rule be a spot foul?
I believe it should. I remember I was covering. It's been a 15-yard penalty for so long. I was covering Penn State when the rule
my whole
changed
life when I played. I mean, all the way.
Yeah. It's not a good. It should be a spot foul because it incentivizes breaking the rules. It's as if if somebody was going to go up for a slam dunk, and I tackle him, he gets 1 point. But if I let him go, he gets 2. So why would I not tackle him every time?
Yep.
Or foul him every time, or whatever you want to say. It incentivizes breaking the rules. So I'm totally against the college rule. I think the NFL has it perfect, and I hope they stay with that.
I agree. We've got to take a break. The great Mike DeCourcy with us. We've got lots more coming up in the next hour. Mike will be back, and so will we right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure, even though I thought that he would play in the last game. I wasn't sure how much, but he did not. But Xavier Johnson, I would be very surprised if he did not play at Nebraska. If he doesn't play in Nebraska, that means you got some issues going on.
Is this the third year in a row where Xavier Johnson has been out going into the new year and then comes back one of the first games of the new year? I know last year that was the case, wasn't it? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, he got hurt last year playing in Las Vegas against Arizona.
But then he was out right until conference play began, or I guess re-began.
I can't remember the year before that.
Either way, it is funny how it happens consistently, it seems like.
Yeah.
I'm sure Indiana fans don't think it's funny.
Hey, while we're in break, the person who put that message on our comment section, I wanted to thank them. Flashed up pretty quickly, and I was in the middle of a point, but
where was it?
I appreciate the thought. Thank you.
Oh.
And we appreciate you making time out of your day to come on as well, even though you got some things going on.
Absolutely. And anytime something like that, reach out, man. We can.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm working. So it's just, it was Monday was not a good day.
Oh man, the Colts, the Pacers.
We were at the Pacers game on Saturday night when they scored 140. Deb and I went to the game.
Was that against the Knicks?
Against the Knicks, yes. 140 points. I looked up at the end of the third quarter and I said to my wife, they've got 100 points and there's like 3 minutes left in the quarter and there's still another quarter after that.
I was still out of town over the weekend, and I got to go to the Florida Gulf or the upset, Florida Gulf Coast upset of FAU.
Wow,
that was an intense game. Those dudes were getting up and down the floor, man.
Wow.
I'm sure Dusty would wish I hadn't have come to that one.
All right, here we go. Contact Amy Rhoda with Ravesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, the 2nd of January, but the first show of 2024. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News Big Ten Network with us. Your studio duties about to get up and going.
Absolutely. Saturday I'll be in. I believe I'll be in with John Beeline. So I will definitely be the second smartest person in that room for sure. If not the third. But John is doing analysis work for us, and he's one of the great basketball minds ever. As good at creating and generating and analyzing offense as there's ever been. 2 championship game appearances in the tens, I guess we call it. The teens. What is it? The tens or the teens? I don't know.
Teens, I think.
Okay.
20 teens.
2013 and 2018, pretty impressive for him to be able to do that. Great success at Richmond, at West Virginia, upstate New York at various schools. Phenomenal coach and great guy, and really looking forward and excited to be working with him this weekend.
Have you worked with him before in this capacity?
Yes. Our one time, well, our one time together was March of 2020. You may recall the doubleheader that opened and closed the Big Ten tournament. Well, I was in studio that night with Dave Revson, the host, Tim Miles, and Coach Beeline. That was our first appearance together. So we'll try not to shut down the world again, so to speak.
Yeah, I remember running into Rick Pizzo outside of Gamebridge now, but it was just the oddest thing, man. It was like the day after 9/11. It was just a boof, a blanket over everything, and I'm like, wow.
Well, I flew out of Chicago after that performance, after that appearance, I should say, and came in on Thursday morning to.
You're lucky to get home, probably.
I came into Gainbridge, I think it was then Bankers Life, preparing to cover the tournament, and walked in, and it took me a while to figure out what was going on. I still remember Rutgers and Michigan were supposed to play the 8-9 game in the tournament, and Rutgers players left the court, and one of them punched a stand-up sign, like, one of those no food or drinks or whatever it was. And I just thought he was getting fired up for the game. And in reality, they had been told that there was going to be no game, and there was the frustration of that. So it was quite a memorable couple of days for sure. I hope no one was bothered by the little piece of humor. He is absolutely a wonderful person on TV. I worked with him as well remotely in 2021 when we got the tournament back, and we had the tournament all here in Indianapolis, and we did the selection show that year remotely with John in Michigan, I believe, and me here in my studio, and Dave Revson at the headquarters at BTN. It'll be a lot better to be all together on Saturday, but I think Dave will be busy because he's got a Big Ten team and a pending Big Ten team getting ready to football it up on Monday night. Is it in Houston?
Yes, sir. Man, that would be fun to be at, let me tell you. And I'm sure that's going to be a packed and loud NRG stadium down in Houston. So I'm looking forward to that game. I can't wait. But in the interim, we've got a lot of basketball to get to. Indiana traveling to Lincoln, Nebraska tomorrow. Well, they're traveling today for the game tomorrow to take on the Cornhuskers, which is again, I've been saying no more gimmies there. They come back home to host an Ohio State team. Then they've got to go to Rutgers. So 2 out of their next 3 games are on the road. And important, they need to win probably at least 2 out of these 3 games. You've got to steal a road win every couple of games to be competitive in this conference, I think, this year.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think Indiana left the non-conference season having played well, but not having quite gotten done what is necessary to feel comfortable about an adequate performance in league, getting them into the field. So they need to have they don't have an extraordinary league season. They have to have a very good league season. What does that mean? Out of 20 games, 12 at least, and 13 would help. I've said this before. I don't think that for most teams in this conference that a 500 record is going to be good enough. There are teams for whom it would be, Purdue, maybe a couple others, but those teams won't have. I mean, Purdue's not going to have a 500 record in this league. It's not going to happen. So I just don't think that that's going to be quite enough. But at the same time, when I say that, I get yelled at every week. I've had 8 Big Ten teams in my tournament field for several weeks now, and I get yelled at every week for overrating them. Well, first of all, half of those teams are on the 11 or 12 line, so they're not being overrated. But at the same time, the league did finish basically the non-conference portion of the season number 2 in the net rankings. Out of the conference net rankings, they are the number 2 conference. And that has been good enough to get 8 to 10 members in over the last 4 years. Now, they've been 1 in some of those years or 2, but they haven't been lower than that in getting that number of teams in. So maybe I'm being harsh by saying you won't be able to go 500 and get in, but I still think that if you want to make it, that it would be wise to make sure that you finish at least a decent difference between yourself and the 500 line in this league.
And not to kind of change subjects, but pointing out that it was kind of wild that Indiana loses a player to COVID. I mean, we kind of alluding back to your conversation a minute ago. Kalel Ware missed the last game because he tested positive for COVID. It's still a thing, man. It still happens. And these are things that aren't affecting the season like they did then. The impact is not the same. It's minimized, but it can happen anytime.
It can, absolutely. I got it for the first time after last season, At the time that I should have been laying around watching movies and having fun, I was in bed, not having fun. But it does happen. It still can happen, and they do test if someone gets ill because they don't want it to spread. I mean, they're not going to test an asymptomatic. I don't think it's a regular thing. I think it's if you feel ill, they're going to test you for it because it's a nickel test or whatever it is. It doesn't basically cost anything, and they don't want the rest of their team to get ill and have the occasion of having to postpone a game or cancel a game or whatever. So if somebody feels ill, they test for it. And if it's not that, then you see all the time, you see a player misses for a non-COVID illness. You see that in NFL, NHL, college at times. If they specify, they'll tell you that because how do they know? Well, because they tested. Because that way they know that the player doesn't have to be isolated and separated for a period of, I think it's 5 days or so, that they need to be away from anybody, especially the team, so that they won't spread it beyond themselves.
Indiana taking on a Nebraska team tomorrow night, like we said, on the road. I should have just talked about their next 4 games because the next 4 games do not include Purdue. But they travel to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. Then they come back to host Ohio State. Then they travel to Rutgers and then host Minnesota. That's all happening in the next 10 days. So this is an opportunity for Indiana to add. They've got a 2-0 start.
Right.
None of these games are insurmountable, although any road game is a difficult game, period.
Yes.
But if they could go 3-1 in this stretch and end up 5-1 right now, this juncture of the season, they would have to be extraordinarily happy with where they were or are if that was the case.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they've already gotten a road win at Michigan, which was significant. I got yelled at last week by Providence fans because they've gotten victories over Marquette and Wisconsin. And those are great victories, without a doubt. And that's why Providence is in the field. But Providence has played nearly every game they've played. I think they played 2 games away from home and split them. Their best win away from home is against the team that last week was number 99, Georgia, which isn't anybody's threat at this stage to be a tournament team. Going on the road is hard. And that's why you mentioned in the break, you were at the Florida Atlantic game at FGCU. Why did Florida Atlantic lose? I saw some people on Twitter to cover the game saying, how could you lose that game? No, the question is, why did you schedule it? Because you went on the road, a game you didn't have to go on the road necessarily. But that's life as Florida Atlantic, I guess. But if you go on the road, you take the risk of losing. So going to Nebraska, which is right now in my field and a significant team and a very talented team, that's a hard game. And Rutgers is not playing great. They're playing a little better. And it's still, if they can get, now they may be going into Rutgers at the right time. I don't know Rutgers academics calendar, but if they get back to Rutgers before the students get back, that could be a real advantage for the Hoosiers because the RAC, when it's full of students, is just in terms of the venue itself, maybe the hardest place to play in the Big Ten. I mean, they've pulled some significant upsets there. Beat Purdue a couple of years ago or last year. Remember going back when they only won, I think, one regular season game in the Big Ten all year. They beat Wisconsin when they were on the way to the championship game. So it's a hard place to play. But it's less hard if you get them when the students aren't there. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know the facts on that, but it may be something that mitigates the challenge for the Hoosiers when they go to the RAC.
Absolutely. What's up next for you, sir?
Well, as you mentioned, I will be in studio Saturday we have a Big Ten doubleheader, I believe, at noon Eastern. And then we'll be starting up Big Ten basketball and beyond on Sunday, I believe. I'll be in the studio on Sunday for sure for the games we have on Sunday as well. I'll have a bracket out later today on Fox Sports social media sites. It's at CBB on Fox. And I will be collected with my fellow sporting news people picking a brief pick of the national championship game later in the week. I was 2-0 in the semifinals with 2 covers. Not promising. Past performance is not indicative of future results, but I was 2-0. I might as well brag about that somewhere.
Who are you picking to win it?
I haven't decided yet.
Oh, mercy. Well, I guess next week you can tell us who you picked, but that'll be after the fact, so you can change that to however it needs to be.
No, it'll be in print. Can't go back on it.
Just kidding. Make sure you check out everything that Mike has at the Sporting News. Make sure you give him a follow as well. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Mike DeCourcy from the Big Ten Network and the Sporting News joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got lots more coming up. Chronic Hoosier joins us next, right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly.
Good morning, Chronic. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I got you now.
All right. I can hear you.
There we go. Life is good.
What's new, CH? What's new, my friend?
I am here, I think.
What is the deal?
I'm going to pull you. Hold on a second. I got to pull his other thing back in. You got us now,
What's,
Chronic?
Yeah, all right. I think I'm back.
There we go. We got you.
What's the deal with Philip Dunham? Have you heard anything?
Hold on. I'm getting crazy echo.
Here, I know what the problem is. I'm going to remove your other one. You brought 2 of your.
Let me.
Is that better?
Much better. But his microphone is.
No.
What doesn't?
Are you good, Chronic?
Dun, dun, dun. He'll join us again.
Let's see if he's good. You with us now?
I am good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
We're good with the echo. That's all right.
Perfect.
What's good with what's going on with Philip Dunham?
We're coming back, Jim. Sorry.
Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. It is the first day of 2024 for us. Second day, of course, on the calendar, Tuesday. Welcome in. Appreciate you being back with us. Happy New Year to everybody. Chronic Hoosier joining us now, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. How's it going, my friend?
It's going well. Happy New Year to you guys.
Appreciate you very much. Hope you had a happy holidays with the fam.
We did. We are, it's got that weird point right now where my wife and I are back to work, but the kids are still home for one more day. So we got one foot in both sides of the door, but we made it through as healthy as we could be, absent some emergency vet visits, and ready for an exciting 2024.
That's all you can do. Indiana football. There's been a Philip Dunham. He posted on social media that he is withdrawing his name from Twitter and I believe returning to Indiana. Then that was deleted. And so there is a little bit of question as to what's going on there. And I have not had time to dig into it anymore today to find out. But it makes you wonder if that was a decision he made without maybe consulting the current staff. I don't know. I'm not saying that because I don't have that information, but I'm trying to think of why that would have happened.
Yeah, I noticed that yesterday, and I kind of raised an eyebrow as to what all it means or how that went about. Little strange. You don't see that one a whole lot, but I think, as you mentioned, that very well could be the case. Could simply be something that, he's got somebody else that manages that, and they got their wires crossed. So I'm not exactly sure, but you would have to imagine that at this point in the game, SIG staff is pretty focused on a direction they're trying to go at most of the spots now. And it very well could be they were just in misalignment as far as what the plans were in that spot for next season. But all speculation at this point, because who knows? It certainly was one of those strange things.
Absolutely. Not that that stuff hasn't happened before, and it won't happen again. It will. So no biggies. Enjoyed the hell out of and for those that are listening on radio, obviously cannot see, but I'm wearing my Penix Envy shirt today as the Washington Huskies and Michael Penix take down Texas last night in a great game. And both games were incredibly fun to watch. And now we get to watch Michael Penix try to become the first quarterback to ever beat Jim Harbaugh and his Michigan Wolverines at two different schools, Chronic.
Yeah, it's crazy. One way or another, you're going to have a former Indiana quarterback as a national champion with Tuttle up in Ann Arbor right now. So it's a lot of Indiana fans vicariously celebrating, but couldn't be happier for Mike as well as Kalen DeBoer, William Inge, and just awesome on them. It was weird. My son and my daughter were talking yesterday, who are we rooting for? And it's like, there's the PC that wants to root for the Big Ten. At the same time, here we are celebrating some admitted cheaters who ascending to the ultimate game of college basketball in a season where they benefited from said cheating. So a little gross, I'm not going to lie, a little gross seeing Michigan in the title game, but go blue, I guess.
This will be like one of the first times I can recall not hoping that the Big Ten participant wins. I'll tell you, I was hoping they got beat by Alabama, but whoever, but it starts to make you worry. Michigan looking awfully strong, man. They're just Blake Corum and that daggone line of Michigans. They are so wrong.
No doubt. I mean, they're an absolute machine this season, and it should be a heck of a game. And I think that's what was probably most rewarding about yesterday, for all the ballyhoo and all the pontificating about who deserved to be in, and how they made the sausage on this year's playoff. Can't deny the fact it produced two outstanding football games, which, with no dog in the hunt, is probably the most or the best you could hope for. And I guess we get to see a early preview of a Big Ten national championship this year.
Yeah, kind of crazy. And I mentioned this earlier, but both of these teams are on Indiana's home schedule next season.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's going to be another Big Ten season for Indiana, no, for sure. It's certainly going to be nice to see the division alignment shaken up next season, but that doesn't change the fact you've got some absolute beasts in this conference, and Coach Sig's got his work cut out getting this program up to a level where they're going to be able to compete week in, week out against literally the best teams in the country. Just glad that we don't have to see Mike Penix come back in an opposing jersey next season.
Absolutely. That game, by the way, opens up not just next week's game, Washington versus Michigan. Of course, the Huskies a 4.5-point underdog, as they have been here of late. This is their third straight major game in which they were an underdog. It's nuts. And
9 games decided by under 10 points.
Yes, a total of 10 points, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which sets a record, I think.
No, they are certainly clutch when it matters most. And anybody that watched Mike Penix during his time at IU, the guy's got moxie. It was just good to see him find a home where he could stay on his feet and out of the operating room.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Of course, Indiana basketball back on the hardwood as well. The Big Ten overall back in action this week as everyone switches back over to Big Ten play. And looking forward to that as now we'll get into the heat of the season. Indiana with a nice little buffer lead of 2-0 start, which is huge because you look at their schedule right now and their next 4 games are split between home and away. But those are all 4 winnable games, but you don't expect Indiana to necessarily go 4-0 during that stretch. But they could. They travel to Nebraska, which is going to be a tough place to play. They come back home, take on Ohio State. Then you got to go to Rutgers, which has not always been easy, but and then host Minnesota at home. They potentially could go 4-0. 3-1, they would be very happy with, I think, coming out of that mess before Purdue comes to visit on the 16th.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road, no doubt. And the big questions lingering right now over the next couple of weeks is what's Indiana's availability going to look like? Xavier Johnson's been out for a good amount of time now, and you've certainly seen some growing pains in his absence. I think it's probably been beneficial for the team to figure out exactly what they need to do. How they need to play in order to withstand that absence. And you saw it in the second half response, I think, against Kennesaw State. Great performance from Anthony Leal to come in there, as well as with the bigs, with Khalil Ware out. Malik Renew steps up for a career game. Peyton Sparks has his best performance yet in Indiana jersey. So it was one of those things where I don't know that it was necessarily planned, but I think the adversity did Indiana good. Now, going forward, it'd certainly be a whole lot better prospect if they could get everybody available and start working their way back, because I fully expect there's going to be a reacclimation period for Xavier when he returns to play. And this is one of those things where you've run out of runway now. You've got to protect your home court at every opportunity, and you've got to steal any possible chance for some road wins in conference if Indiana wants to bolster its tournament resume, which it heads into the new year looking pretty weak right now. So some great opportunities, some big challenges ahead. And you look at Pomeroy. You can go through the month of January, and Pomeroy predicts 1 IU win. Losses to Nebraska, Ohio State, Rutgers, Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa. So there's a reason we got to play the game, but it's certainly a steep hill for the Hoosiers. And I think having full availability is going to make things a whole lot more promising.
Yeah, the greatest ability is availability, as they say. Xavier, I thought he might play in the last game just to get some rust knocked off of him. Since that didn't happen, if he plays in this game, how much do you expect him to play? Is it going to be something you think they can get him out there or just sparingly in minutes?
Who knows? I'm I'm curious to see exactly what his movement's like, how it impacts his speed, his lateral quickness. Indiana guards continue to struggle defensively, and I think that's probably where Xavier's been missing the most. So it's going to be hard to tell. Just because he's back doesn't mean it's going to have the same impact as a fully healthy Johnson. So we'll see exactly what kind of shape he's in. But I think getting Khalil is going to be just as important as they get into the teeth of Big Ten here, because, make no mistake, it was great to see Malik answer the call. It was great to see Peyton answer the call in his first start. All that said, though, Indiana's going to have to develop some depth, and they're going to have to hopefully maintain it and keep everybody healthy if they want to have a shot, because, this is very precariously positioned, and the last thing you need to be doing is dropping winnable games, whether it be on the road or at home, if you want to hear your name called on Selection Sunday.
Yeah, this is actually, to me, I think this is a really important 4-game stretch for the Hoosiers, because none of these games are games where you just look at and go, well, that's a loss. None of those games do you look at and just say it's a loss. Now, you look at going to Rutgers and going to Ohio State going to Rutgers and going to Lincoln is going to be a difficult chore, but you host Ohio State, you host, where else did I get lost? Minnesota,
and then Purdue, yeah.
So, but before that Purdue game, if they go 3-1 and you end up 5-1 at this juncture of the season, I think that they would be happy with that. They would, of course, rather win all 4 of those games. I don't know how likely that is, especially with Ken Pom picking them to lose them.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where, they've certainly given themselves a little bit of cushion starting off 2-0 with those early December games. But this is one where I think everybody's going to ultimately end up chasing Purdue season long. And on one of the more winnable stretches, at least competitively, you've got to make as much hay as you possibly can against the Nebraskas, the Rutgers, and the Minnesotas. And, with Ohio State, one of the better teams in the conference, you absolutely have to cash that ticket when you play them at home. Fortunately, we'll hopefully have the students back for that game, or at least they'll be trickling in by then. I don't know that it's going to be a full student crowd, but you've got to tap into that magic at Assembly Hall every opportunity you get. Because as Mike was saying, playing in Piscataway is no cakewalk any longer. And Indiana fans know this full well over the years that Rutgers has been a conference member now. So, get them where you can on the road and absolutely defend the McCracken court. And let's just see where the chips fall. But I think Indiana is figuring some stuff out about themselves. To see them starting to get a little bit looser with the 3 ball, it's certainly a welcome sign, and one of those things that's hopefully going to enable them to be a little bit more competitive against teams that shoot a little bit better on average than Indiana does. You can't make them if you don't take them. So seeing that element being introduced into the game plan and seeing the guys get some confidence in their shot. Hopefully gives them a fighting chance here once they get on the road here this week.
Absolutely, and Indiana with a chance to keep their postseason playoff hopes alive, and this is going to be a tenuous season. It's one of those where you cannot afford any slip-ups, whether it be on the road or especially at home. You have to take care of business at home this season.
Oh, no doubt. I think that's, and Mike Woodson is very firmly of the belief that you just shouldn't lose games at Assembly Hall. I don't care who it's against. You just shouldn't. And that's the magic of that gym. And you saw it against Kansas, having just got their doors blown off down in Atlanta against Auburn, to come back and take Kansas right up to the wire. Probably should have won that game if we're being honest. And I hope they don't regret that come Selection Sunday. But that's what home court needs to be like. That's what opposing teams need to experience when they come in, is just a raucous, impossible place to think, hear, and play. And if you can do that and you can avoid dropping those winnable games on the road, I think things will turn for Indiana. But right now, at least on paper, it doesn't look super promising with the strength of the Big Ten being where it is this season. And that certainly stands to change a little bit. But, if history's any guide, traditionally the league ends up beating itself up more than it boosts itself. So we'll see how it all shakes out over the next 3 months. But it's not one of those where you can just bank on, a top 8 finish in the league and you're getting a bid. The league's just not that good this year. So Indiana's going to have to steal whatever opportunities they can on the road and get some of those quad one wins in their bag because, quite frankly, they just don't have a lot of great wins right now. And some road wins are a great way to start stacking those up.
Absolutely. Over the holidays, how much did you, just in general conversation with anyone, talk about Indiana football?
Yeah. It's such a weird year right now.
And how different was that from last year?
It's so much excitement and enthusiasm back. Little weird with I'm not gonna lie, the Penix thing's a little bit weird. Like I said, I am super happy for Mike and everybody there. That being said, it's still a little bit of salt in the wound. That's every bit as bitter as it is sweet. Knowing that was our guy and knowing that mismanagement of the program is what allowed everything to happen in the manner in which it did. So glad we're through that period. Just unfortunate that it had to shake out that way. All that said, for a season that really didn't produce a whole lot of memorable moments, it certainly has provided a very optimistic off season. And, I imagine that hopefully, we just get to talk about depth charts from this point forward and enough with the drama and everything else, all the outside stuff that's been swirling around. That said, though, I am enjoying some of the JMU fan tears, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep, absolutely. Chronic Hoosier brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda. Appreciate you, brother. Look forward to talking to you on the other side.
We'll see you next week. Be well.
Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right, one more to go.
I am trying to send you. Dang it. This stupid phone does not bring people's names up like it should. Gee whiz.
Whatever it is, don't worry about it. I'll just talk with you this segment.
Well, I want it because I think it's hilarious.
Excuse me.
Ooh, I'm hot. Son. Be hot up in her. All right, I just sent you 2 links.
You should have emailed. You should have sent them to my email because I can play them directly from the email. I can't play them off my phone.
Relax.
How much time we got? I don't know why you said relax. I wasn't angry.
These two links are crazy. They're from consecutive IU home games, basketball. And it is about the opposing team putting the ball in play.
Okay.
Both times, they are like...
Here's what I'm going to do. We're about to come back from break. I'm going to drop out and look at them, and then I'll pop back in when I've got them, okay?
Mm-hmm. Jock Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, our first broadcast of the 2024 year. I knew I was going to live this long. I'd have taken better care of myself. But glad to be here. Welcome back. Looking over the bowl championship picks, Capital One Bowl Mania, trying to get that score pulled up. I'm getting crushed with one game to go. I'm 23-19. That's terrible. I'm like, what happened? I'm in 12th, but that's because there's a 80-way tie for 12th. Jared at the top right now. Jared Wolf, 29-13. Dr. Drew Jones, he's a game back. And so those two are the only two that have a shot. Let's see. Can I pull up the picks? Oh, I can. I can see who he has picked to win it all. No, he does. I cannot see those final picks. Ooh, so we shall see. We shall see. But I sent a couple of links to John Boy. Do you have those, John?
So John Boy just played those off air, and unfortunately the volume on both of those clips is entirely too low, even when I boost it up.
Well, it's not the volume. Well, that's true. Okay. Well, I wish since we're
is it able to be explained? Because I'm curious what it was too.
There were back-to-back games in which at home at Indiana in Bloomington, that the opposing team was putting the ball back in play after a possession. The first one, they literally take it out of play to give it to a guy who steps out and puts it back in play. And nothing gets called. Then I believe on the next one, he's got like a foot into the court before he puts the ball in play. I mean, you talk about some sloppy officiating. The one was amazing, though. He literally, they literally
that
put
is
it in
insane.
play.
I'm looking at the very first one. I'm looking now. I can't show this on the stream, or else there's a chance we'll get copyrighted from the Big Ten Network. But he does exactly that. The guy throws it in bounds to somebody who then walks out of bounds and throws it right back in, and nobody blinks an eye about it.
No, it was stupid. I'm like, oh, you can't do that. And then on the second one, I believe, the opposing player puts the ball in play, but he's got like a foot.
He does. He's got 1 foot already in bounds before he throws the ball to his teammate.
Yeah. Those are back-to-back games here that have gone on. So, coming up tomorrow on the program, Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette joins us. Kyle Neddenrip back from the Indy Star. Rick Bozich, the Hall of Famer. We haven't
heard from Rick Bozich in a while. He's been a busy man.
A couple of weeks. Well, it's been a busy time. So looking forward to kind of getting things back together. But looking forward to that. And then, of course, tonight, what is
Big
happening?
Ten play resumes.
Big Ten basketball play resumes. What is on the schedule for tonight? First of all, as far as Big Ten play goes, you have 3 games. Number 1, Purdue traveling to Maryland, where the Terrapins, that was about the only place they could win a game last season was in Maryland. Iowa traveling to number 21, Wisconsin. That could be entertaining. Both of those contests are at 7 p.m. The Purdue game is on Peacock, and the Iowa-Wisconsin game is on Big Ten Network. And that game will be followed by Northwestern at Illinois, which, there you go. There's going to be that's another good game, actually. That should be a good game.
Illinois without Terrence Shannon. It's going to be interesting to see how they adapt to him not being a part of their program, at least for the foreseeable future. And
I mean, it didn't bother him in the last game.
No.
But yeah, Northwestern's
they were playing their final non-conference matchup, which, again, it is what it is. But you're entering Big Ten play now. Northwestern's a scrappy team. They've already beaten Purdue, the only team to knock off Purdue so far this season. Yes, this is on the road, but it'll be interesting to see what the Wildcats can do.
Yeah, potential spot for them to pick up a big win, although they already have one.
They do.
They already have a signature win with that win over Purdue. I mean, you want to talk about having that already on your resume, man, you now go out and take care of business. That's all you have to do.
If you go out and beat Illinois, you've already beaten the top 2, or supposedly the top 2 teams in the conference. That should make Northwestern, believe it or not, a contender for the conference championship.
Someone asking what is tomorrow's Indiana game on, and I believe that is on the old-fashioned Big Ten Network.
It is on
9 o'clock
matchups. Tip. Rutgers takes on Ohio State on BTN, followed by Indiana at Nebraska on BTN. So those late tips, man, especially if Rutgers Ohio State goes a little late, it could be a late one for Indiana fans.
And I was just talking about Purdue playing at Maryland, and Philip pointing out the Boilers have lost its last 4 games at Maryland. Last Purdue win there coming in December of 2017.
Wow.
Not sure that this Maryland team is quite that strong, and Mount Edie is, dude, he's almost unstoppable. You are literally going to have to shut down a big portion of Purdue's team to beat them. But I think what happens is, in seeing some of these games here of late, whether it's Florida Gulf Coast beating FAU, those are different kinds of games. I mean, watching that game, they were getting it up and down the floor. Florida Gulf Coast was drilling those 3-point shots, and any given night, you saw the trouble Indiana had early through the season with some of these teams. Well, those teams are going to get better as well. Those are not bad teams.
I mean, Florida Gulf Coast, I don't know if they're favorites in their conference, but they've been to the NCAA tournament before. Don't be surprised if they win their league and find their way there again.
Would not be surprised. Well, you got Pat Chambers as a coach.
Yeah, a veteran of the Big Ten, if you want to call it that.
That's another thing I was thinking of. The coaching that's out there today is crazy. Here was this little game that not very many people were probably paying attention to. Florida Gulf Coast State hosting FAU. You've got Pat Chambers, who just came out of the Big Ten. You've got Dusty May, who is fresh off of a Final Four run and they have shown that they're not a fluke. They just beat, was it Arizona?
Arizona, yeah.
Arizona in overtime. They played Illinois tight with Terrence Shannon. So this is not a fluke team. They just, Florida Gulf Coast just kept getting up by 9, 10, 11, and FAU would make a run, but they had to make too many runs, and they just couldn't get there. So This is what that's why the tournament is so much fun, because you see teams like this, and like a team, I'll use Purdue as an example. You've got Mount Edie, who is gonna probably, unless something barring anything crazy, he's going to become a back-to-back winner of the Player of the Year award for the first time since, I think, Ralph Sampson.
Wow, that'd be crazy.
And boy, that would have been a nice matchup. He's so much bigger than Ralph Sampson was from a thickness-wise, but yeah, Pat Chambers doing an excellent job. And let me tell you, Pat Chambers ain't never leaving Fort Lauderdale, which is where this school is located. That's why people talk about Dusty May moving on. I'm like, why? He's in Boca Raton, Florida. Pat Chambers is now in Fort Myers, Florida. It's like being able to be retired without being retired.
Well, see, the thing is, Dusty May is one of the youngest coaches in college basketball, at least in terms of the elite teams, or at least close to elite teams, I guess. But Dusty May, it's one of those things where, yeah, I know Boca Raton has the money, and they're funneling in their funds to.
I was just thinking about it being Boca Raton.
But either way, like, it's going to be tough to once you lose the guys who were part of this Final Four run after this season, depending on what they do in the postseason. It's going to be tough to see if he wants to stick around, because I'm sure the recruiting isn't what it is at bigger schools.
Yeah, it's just quality of life, man. Quality of life sometimes makes a gigantic difference.
And maybe he has no desire to be. I mean, look at Mark Few at Gonzaga. Now, Gonzaga has been a power for quite some time. Yeah, they haven't won a national championship, but Mark Few's been content at a school that plays in one of the weaker conferences in college basketball.
And it's in the middle of nowhere. He's not on the ocean. Dusty's on the ocean. Pat Chambers
some people
is
on
the
ocean. Like being out in the west coast. I believe Gonzaga's in Spokane. I mean, you got the mountains in the area, and
I'm just like, Pat, if I'm Pat Chambers, baby, this is it. This is the last job. Cool little arena there at Florida Gulf Coast. Thanks a lot to everybody for down there for their cooperation. That was a good time. I'm glad that just happened. I just happened to see that. I'm like, oh my God.
You mean Florida Atlantic? Wait, no, they played at Florida Gulf Coast. Excuse me.
Yeah, it was at Florida Gulf Coast in Fort Myers. I was like, wow, a little surprised. So that was cool. What's coming up? Did everyone have a happy New Year? I hope happy and safe New Year. When
did you come back in from your voyage back to Bloomington?
Yesterday.
So you
no. I'm sorry, Sunday.
So you were back before the new year.
I was.
Glad to be back. You're ready to hit the ball running in 2024.
Right at it, baby.
That's right.
Right at it.
And things get started. I guess you could say they got started last night with the college football playoff semifinals, and Big Ten play resumes for.
How much better is that than seeing and I'm not talking about any current games that happened this year. I'm talking about previous semifinal and some national championship games have just sucked. They've been blowouts. But both of these games were just down to the end. I mean, obviously one goes into overtime and the other was hold on for dear life. Texas had an opportunity after Washington they let them get deep into territory. It came down to the final play. Yeah, they had a shot on the last play of the game.
Is the game, like we said at the beginning of the show, it didn't need to come down to that. And I know Mike DeCourcy laid out earlier as well, like Kalen DeBoer may have made some decisions, but it's not decisions that only he makes. College football and NFL coaches won't take knees unless they know they're able to run the clock out. And so Kalen DeBoer, I guess you could say he rolled the dice a little bit, trying to get a first down, and things just didn't work out for them, unfortunately. And they won the game, so ultimately it worked out, but they put themselves in a position to lose the game potentially, unfortunately.
A little news out west. USC's Bronny James shined with a highlight. Season best, 15 points. After a little health scare, a big health scare for him. That's huge for him to come in and play. And even though it was in a loss, 86-70 to Oregon State, good to see that happen for him. Looking forward to tomorrow as we get back after it with Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenripp from Indy Star, and Rick Bozich joining us on the program. Of course, big thanks today to our friend Don Fischer, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Chronic Hoosier. Big thanks to John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. And, of course, most importantly, each and every one of you. Without you, there's no reason for us to be here. We're looking forward to be back here at it tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.